What's good, everybody? This is Alessandro from Dope Boys Music, back with another sample breakdown. Today we are filming this sample breakdown from my studio. Unfortunately, my brother couldn't make it today. We are both super busy finishing sample packs, and we decided that I'm going to do this sample breakdown on my own. This one is from our latest sample pack, New York Minute Volume 4. The sample is called Wisdom, and it has a very reminiscent and melancholic vibe. I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy this one. Let's get straight to it. So what started this sample was this piano right here. And the piano you're hearing is actually this one. It's my own. I really love the sound of this piano and I use it in a lot of my production. But for demonstration purposes, let's jump to Alicia's keys. So the chord structure is pretty simple actually. We have a A minor 11th chord. Or maybe you could say A minor 9 with a 4. A minor 9 sus4 because there's no C in the chord. And the next chord is the F major 9. And it just swings back and forth between those two chords. And instead of just playing the chords, they are arpeggiated in a way where the piano sort of plays a melody. And in terms of editing, because this sound is already rendered, I can't show you the exact effects. This sound doesn't sound like it has been processed that much. If you've seen some of our older sample breakdowns by now, you probably know my go-to EQs and compressors and reverbs. And it's probably just a mixture of those. So it's probably a Pro Q3, getting rid of some of the bass and maybe accentuating some of the highs. Because oftentimes the real piano, it needs a little bit of high boost, maybe some RVox, and lastly, like a cool reverb, maybe rev plate. These plugins will do the trick. I'm 99% sure it's like a mixture of those. Okay, so the next element we have is this texture right here. And these recordings are actually field recordings that I did on a morning walk when I was living back in Germany. So these are very, very nostalgic to me. I used these instead of just regular like texture sounds because I thought for this one it felt a bit more personal. And I wanted to create like a very deep and emotional composition. So what we have here, we have these 3 channels. They are all being routed into this group. When I do something like this, I treat the group as if it's the sound, and I don't do a lot of editing to like the sub sounds. So here we just have a bit of filtering to filter out the bass rumble from the field recorder and from doing steps and stuff. We also have the RVox compressor, and this is a pretty heavy compression setting at -16. The gain is being dragged down to -12. The reason why I did that is because I didn't want it to have any like dynamic variation. I just wanted this to sound really flat. Yeah, like I said, all of this is being routed into this group. Let's just listen to the dry texture recordings. So right off the bat, I can tell there's a lot of noise on the sound. So that's where these 2 plugins come in handy. These are audio repair plugins from Waves. So NS1 noise suppressor, it's basically just an algorithm that detects noise, and the more you push this fader, the more noise it'll remove. And the WNS noise suppressor is, from my understanding, basically the same tool, but it has like a built-in EQ and you can tell it where it should work more or less. So as you can see here in the mids, I have turned the fader down to -4.8, and up here it's at -1.1. So it doesn't do a lot here, but it does more here. And it does the most like at this very upper band where there's all this noise going on. And yeah, let's just take a listen to what these sound together. It basically gets rid of all the noise. Then we have this EQ right here, EQ'd out some of the bass. And since we don't have the noise up here anymore, we can now boost these frequencies. And then we have the RVox compressor, basically just making this texture sound louder. And at the very end, we have this Camel Crusher. So the Camel Crusher is a very versatile tool. You can do a lot of stuff with it. It's free on top of that, so you should definitely check that out. In this particular example, it's just being used as a cutoff filter. As you can see here, there's like a little automation going on in the composition. and it fades out after the first 8 bars. So here the cutoff is all the way down and you can't hear it anymore. And then it comes back up here. So the next thing we have is this pad sound, or I called it mellow strings in the composition. And this is Arturia's CMI-V. From my understanding, this is like a replica of a sampling machine. So you have little snippets of audio and you can place them all over your keyboard and play them in different pitches. And this layers the chords that the piano is playing. And we have this elastic pitch here. The sound actually starts an octave higher, and there's this little automation here that pitches it an octave down. And here we have the Camel Crusher actually filtering the sound. Not as an automation, but you know, as an effect for the sound itself. Then we have RC20 Retro Color. This is not a preset or anything. You know, if you throw this in, all the effects will be turned on like this. And I just turned this digital off and used some of the reverb and the noise and the wobble. And distort and magnetic, I just add them to taste. And then we have this magnitude fader, which is basically just a mix fader. And it's set to about halfway. Add some character to the sound, you know. Okay, so let's listen to all the sounds together. And the pad dropping an octave is the perfect setup for bringing in the bass. Once the pad goes down, the bass is also introduced. And this is a Trillium patch. It's called Muted Marcus Hood Boom. Pretty cool name if you ask me. And in terms of effects, we have got CLA Bass. This is a very nice multi-effect tool for bass sounds. It has these bass and treble faders, so you can sort of use this like an amp simulator. Compressor, sub adds more of like a lower harmonic octave. Distortion speaks for itself. And up here you have different settings for these faders. So you have bass, sub, lower or upper. So you can tell this fader what it is supposed to accentuate. Compressor, you have push, which is like a more gentle compressor. Then you have spank, which is like more of a brutal compressor. And then you have wall, which is almost like a brick wall limiter. So this is just following the chords and has this little fill here. You know, gives it a bit more of a live bass feel. And then on bar 9, we have this ride. This is the Abbey Road Modern Drummer, and later on it plays this hi-hat. Just to give the sample more of a pulse, because everything is playing like pads or the chords are just lying and there's not a lot of movement going on. The coolest part in my opinion is the saxophone that comes in at bar 9, and this is a live saxophone. So let's just take a listen to the saxophone real quick. I got the saxophone, it already sounded pretty dope. I just decided to add a bit more reverb to it. And this is a classic plate preset from the Arturia Rev plate. And as always, I use this blend fader to adjust the mix of the reverb until I think it sits right. And all the sounds together so far, up until bar 17, sound like this. At the end of the saxophone, we have this little reverb automation here. Giving the saxophone a nice fade out. And here we have new instruments. First of all, we have these bells. They play the same melody that the piano plays. This is a mellotron patch called Sequence Me. And we also have these flutes. They are also live recordings. Adding a different texture to the chords. These three sounds are all routed into the flute group. And here we have a little bit of Valhalla vintage verb. Adds a very nice tail to the flute. And this filter to roll off some of the lows. Sounds very nice and organic. And then lastly, we have this cello right here. Plays the bass notes. In order to keep it in that style, where it sounds very organic. Instead of adding a bass synth, I decided to go for a cello. And these are basically all the sounds of the composition. So the cello is following the bass, the bells are following the piano, and the flutes are introduced. And so with the hi-hat together, it adds a nice, different texture that we haven't heard yet in the composition. Here the hi-hat drops and the cello plays sort of a solo, I guess you could call it. Or it plays something that grabs your attention a bit more. So I like that the cello ends on the sharp 11 up here, which is this B. It's a sharp 11 of the F major 7-9 chord. And this actually introduces a very tense or suspenseful vibe. You just listen to this last chord right here. It's also kind of cool to end the composition there and just leave that as sort of a question mark. And this cello patch itself is from East West Quantum Leap's Hollywood Strings. And the patch itself, it's called Celli Legato Portato Max. So it is a patch that already has these like legato swoops in there. It's a very cool sound. Okay, so let's just take a listen to the composition once more and then we wrap it up. So I hope you enjoyed this sample breakdown and you learned something for your own production. If you enjoyed this particular sample, make sure to check it out at dopeboykits.com. It's from our latest sample pack, New York Minute Volume 4. And as always, like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff, and stay tuned for the next video. Peace.